stones at me. But with BYU, it's something that we've been wanting to work with and do for quite some time. So we're grateful to be rubbing shoulders with you all. But to get to know me a little bit more, I think it's important to kind of break down some walls and get comfortable. Again, Brad Muramoto. My world is my family. My wife, Missy, and my three rad little boys, Crewell and Jones, they keep us on our toes. Interesting fact about both my wife and I, we are both identical twins who met at a twin convention, which is made up. We met at Costa Rica, but not at a convention. I wish that was the case. One of the coolest things I'm proud of is I orchestrated this over-the-top plan to get my wife now, or my girlfriend then, who's my wife now, to New York City under the pretense of a family get-together. And proposed her out there to the point where I had all my siblings, my mom, dialing in, tapping in about being out there for Thanksgiving Macy's parade and all this stuff. And when I proposed her at the Bethesda Fountain in Central Park, she was anticipating my family to show up and introduce her and I. And a memory that I'll never forget. Surfing is one of my biggest passions. Being outdoors is where I find a lot of my inspiration, but it allows me to really have life slow down where I can just focus on other stuff outside of work. The stupidest thing I've ever done was catch an alligator, and please don't be blessed with me because I haven't done my mission. Another fact about me, my twin brother grabbed my mom's calligraphy pen and was chasing me down the hallway when we were still kids and stabbed me right under the eye. And it's like a little tattoo. Had it been like a centimeter the other direction, I would be blind. So he's a punk. And I've been working as a creative now for 14 years. 4 of which have been agencies and 3 have been in-house. So right now, growing up, my philosophy, I always thought to myself, what if? Like, what if I bounce my twin brother in the trampoline and flies to the moon? What if I kick my neighbor's cat and it flies to China? What if? And not until I was engaged into like Super Bowl and finally dialing into the commercials and seeing how cool they were, did I realize, oh, you can get paid for being creative. So thinking of creativity, I want everyone to kind of think to themselves what creativity means to you. Creativity is endless possibilities. When it comes to creativity, there's no right or wrong. When it comes to creativity, you can have fun. You can take risks, you can be calculated, and you can just be simply playful. But again, creativity really falls upon what your ability is to really think what creative is defined as. So in the Muramoto household, let me tell you what creativity means. Creativity means moving into the bathtub because you're sick of your brother. Creativity is converting your little brother into a Ninja Turtle, building a torch, trying to create a spaceship. Creativity is when something does not happen as planned and it backfires. Creativity is being born and creating a robot, painting on your face, playing Kill the Zombies at the park in the pool, and again, painting your face. So, again, what does creativity mean to you? To kind of give you guys a little background about just my creative experience and my path and how I ended up where I am today. As Ben mentioned, having traveled to San Diego every summer with my family, I just wanted to live there and be a bomb. And once I realized there was a portfolio school out there, I applied. But my biggest fear was, I love being creative, but I cannot draw for my livelihood. So I remember going through admissions, being like, hey, I can't draw, I'm going to get rejected. They're like, no, that's stupid. I'm like, cool. So I applied and I got in. So I ended up moving to San Diego, not knowing what I was going to do. There was state dances going on that weekend, having to park my U-Haul at the Seminole Institute building outside of California State, and interrupting the DJ and making an announcement, hey, I need a place to let everyone have insurance available. Last night I found something. But it worked out. When it rains, it pours, and I knew I was supposed to be there because everything imagined going wrong went wrong. While my time at Institute, I was able to work with Steve Langgate's studio on some really cool movie posters. Teamed up with San Diego Zoo to educate elementary schools about the watershed. What you put upstream is what you put downstream. Winning Best of Show for a student 2 years back to back was a humbling beyond. I mean, it was just really, really cool. I'm super grateful for my experience. But everything changed when Alex Boguski came to San Diego and gave a presentation. And one of my good buddies, who was in the program with me, at the very end, Alex had a Q&A. And my buddy shook his hands up and said, hey, will you give me an internship? And of course, being put on the spot, Alex had no other choice than say yes. I was pissed. Because I was like, I mean, I'm super grateful for my buddy, but having worked with the mentors, like, you can get into Crispin, a lot of opportunities will open up to you. So knowing my buddy got this free ticket, I went back to my place and started building out my portfolio. I didn't tell anyone, but I submitted my portfolio into this internship program. And one morning I got a call from his assistant, and I was a designer selected to do an internship out in Boulder, Colorado. And from that moment, things changed really quickly. So while I was there, as Ben mentioned, I caught wind of the American Advertising Federation puts on this yearly program to recognize and help marketing and creative students to get their foot in the door. Because the spot you guys are in, I'm sure it's terrifying, not knowing what to do next, but there's a lot of options, so we'll talk about that in a second. So I entered an application to get in to be one of the most promising, and that year I graduated from the school, the economy sank, and job opportunities were non-existent, and I was freaking out. But to make matters worse, our professor was like, hey, 2 people in this program are only gonna make it into an ad agency, the rest of you guys are screwed. We're not the best teaching, but it freaked us all out. So, to my surprise, I got into this Interpublic Interactive Associates program, where I was able to fly out to New York, show my portfolio to all these agencies, and it was beyond humbling. So, this Interactive Associates program, and I would look into it, I don't know if it's still around, I should have to be an alumni of it, but it's such a rad program. They select about 40 marketing and ad students from across the country, and they get into a 2-year rotational program, allowing you to rotate from 4 different agencies in your specific field. In my case, it was art direction. So to start my journey out to New York, again, I moved out having no place to live. The first agency I jumped into was Draft SCB. And it was just a really cool experience. The funnest project was that top storyboard, which is a video for City Harvest, which is a charity in New York City that collects untouched food and distributes to the homeless in New York City. There was a study that was done by the UK that there was like some crazy amount of 1.4 apples are thrown out a day in New York City untouched. So with that fact, the creative team and I, we ran with it. So having zero budget, but working with the pro bono, it's awesome because you do have a lot of creative freedom. So we ended up coming up with this idea of renting out one of the trains in Penn Station and close it down for 2 hours. And had this idea of this tourist in town, and it was the first commercial shot with an iPhone. And the jimmy rig that we had to create was pretty gnarly because without going too technical, it just took a lot of calculation to make sure all the CG rendering was going to add up based on the feed and the recording within that iPhone setup. So fun fact is the only real output in that commercial is the one in her hand. Check it out, it's pretty cool. But with that, we were able to saturate all of New York City, Brooklyn, Queens, even some areas of Jersey to really promote this idea. Next was Hill Holiday. And Hill Holiday is, one of their top accounts is Verizon. And a lot of what they do is focus on direct mail uses. Glad I got my hands on it. Did not like it, but it was a good experience. Next agency I went to was Deutsch. And Deutsch was pretty rad because they were having tons of clients, but they did not have a lot of creative resources. So one of the first accounts I got to work on was the Dot Milk program, which evolved into, hey, how can we promote chocolate milk? And so they were really rad in doing innovation, testing, and experimenting. Followed by this really inappropriate picture of some female underwear, which seems really awkward. But my point being with that is, in advertising, sometimes you are having to do projects that are confusing to you. Being the youngest of 5 boys, I did not know anything about Carefree or any of that stuff. So going into research development from thought milk to feminine hygiene products to banking, no matter what you're doing, research is so critical. So being the only male on that account, they were able to educate me on so much. The objective was to encourage the female audience to use their product daily. Not sure how that panned out. But anyways, the next greatest account that I worked on was PNC Bank, and they were pretty radical in the way that they were wanting to shake the banking stigma and making it more user-friendly, especially for the younger generation. And that was to really reinvent the way we look at financing into a visual structure. So with them, we were able to convince them to help us run with their product, which is called Virtual Wallet, and take over all these billboard spots outside the universities in the East Coast, making them into three-dimensional pieces. And it turned out pretty successful. Another close time with this company is Clear shampoo is like the #1 share shampoo product in Asia. Asia was wanting to incorporate this product into the United States. And at the time, they were trying to really push Tina Fey to be the spokesperson for this project. And once Tina and her team dove into this, they realized that Clear shampoo and her products were tested on animals. So Tina backed out. That was after my copyright and I flew to Singapore, spent 2 weeks out there, helping the Singapore team really write the voice of Tina Fey and really try to figure out how she can really encompass this product and really speak to the demographic here in the States. Great experience, but it had to be nothing. So at Deutsch, they offered me a full-time gig, so I left the program, stayed there for a few years, and an opportunity came calling back home. And I was grateful. New York was really exhausting, and the time of my life, I was ready to just catch my breath. So this athletic apparel company called Gamer reached out to me to help rebrand their company. But what really was needed was a creative team. They'd never worked with a creative department before, nor had they had the understanding to really be current and offer a product that would really resonate with a variety of team sports. But their ultimate goal was really to dive into brick and mortar, but they worked with sales reps to really sell their brand. And one thing that we were wanting to dive into is sublimation, which is taking digital design and printing it straight on fabric. And not knowing anything about apparel, athletic wear, or all the nuances that were within this athletic apparel, I had to dive into research, prepare myself, because someone else was going to help me. But the biggest thing that was my biggest priority was building a team. And having worked in a few different creative departments, the one thing that you'll notice right out the gate is ego. And life's too short. Ego is a waste of time. And so I wanted to build a team that people wanted to be there, wanted to really push the envelope, wanted to bring things to the table that would lead to this industry. So with the team that we have, we were able to do some really, really cool stuff. Then a complete end of the spectrum of pampering products like Perfectly Posh, they reached out to me to also reevaluate their creative team and also elevate their brand. Never had any experience with packaging or pampering goods. I had to jump in and really understand, one, the demographic, two, my creative team, but three, the scope in which I knew the potential of this team. So within my time there, we designed, I swear, over 400 plus custom packaging designs, from creating lipstick to different fragrant shampoos to soaps to even that fizzy. This right there was, I had 24 hours to prepare, and my mom, you can't see it very well, let me use all the decorations in her house to really artwork this spot. But then Kenn Garff came calling. And Kenn Garff, at the time, I don't know about Kenn Garff had 8 dealerships within Utah. Come to find out, at the time they have them in Iowa, Michigan, Texas, and California. Each dealership was working with an outside ad agency, but Kenn Garff wanted to help these agencies, or these dealerships, save money. So they recruited me to help build out their internal ad agency, specifically the creative team. And from there, a lot of really cool things happened. But before I continue with that, I want to jump back to creativity. You may think when you do creativity, it might be a born trait, like this having brown eyes. When you think of creativity, you may equate it to being able to dance, artistically perform something, compose music, act, draw, or even coming down to creating content or simply executing a deliverable spot in an advertisement. But really what it comes down to is creativity is just a myth. Everyone has a different level of creativity within them, We all execute it and perform it and show it in different ways. What's important with the whole marketing department and setup is, for such a long time, the expectation was, if you're only creative if your title has creative in it. The assumption was creatives, architects, random designers were paid to be creative, whereas doctors, lawyers, attorneys are not. However, that could be far from the truth. Just because you cannot draw, like I cannot draw, or other things does not mean you are not creative. My point being is, within the whole spectrum of putting one thought, one idea, one message that really resonates from start to finish, comes with the idea of design thinking. Design thinking is everyone involved in this project work together to understand the demographic, the ins and outs, try to figure out how many creative ideas that we can come together, whether they're good or bad, whether they make sense or not, but really trying to figure out and dive into every aspect of that demographic we're trying to target. When more creative minds come together, whether you're an account manager, a copywriter, or even our front desk receptionist at Kenn Garff, everyone will pitch in ideas to really figure out what will work, what will not. You never know until you try and really push it. So they did a study, or IBM did a study last year, and over 1,500 CEOs said creativity is the single most important leadership competency for enterprises facing the complexity of global commerce today. If you think about it, the moment we wake up, we are bombarded with commercial, and it's exhausting to the point that we will see a spot and completely zone it out. What's happening is all these big corporations or even small corporations are pumping out as much creative assets to really get your eyes, get your loyalty, get your money, and ultimately get you to be a brand advocate for them. However, what's happening is they're thinking the more content that we pump out, the more that it's going to stick. But it's not. When it comes to the content, David Ogilvy, one of the great ad gurus, said, what really decides consumers to buy or not is the content and advertising, not its form. So right now, digital video is taking off. The content within that is critical. But when it comes to a static ad, a billboard, a radio spot, a website, it really comes down to the content, and ultimately the form does not matter as long as it's able to resonate with the consumer. What's staggering is over 14% of people are able to walk away and remember an ad. The 84% of other ads out there are not generating the effective results that they're anticipating. So they're just having more noise, more chaos, and more cluster to our experience day in and day out, which is getting us to be more immune to simply walking away from any visual advertising component that we are taking in. So as a marketing team, one thing that we've been able to do with Google is really helping the automotive industry, and they have taken Kenn Garff under its wing. And we've been able to do a lot of study and research development and understanding, all right, Kenn Garff's idea is not only, our tagline is "We Hear You," but the objective of the overall company is to be as unparalleled as possible. We want to be able to make it a good experience. We want to take away the pressure, the fear, or the anxiety of having to negotiate or being pressured into something that you do not want. So with that, we are able to lock down 3 different main objectives when figuring out an ad. One is awareness. It's get noticed with a strong start. That's very brand heavy. Another objective is consideration. And this is showing the viewer how this product fits into their lifestyle. This is where emotional connection can possibly happen. And then action is really close to doing an imitation of, hey, this is the offer, go for it. So knowing that these objectives, this has really allowed us to really hone in on understanding how to go about executing an ad so we're not adding to the noise out there in the world. So awareness, from an automotive perspective, tight shots, really over the top, energetic, showing it in motion, and really giving a really strong first impression. Consideration, my favorite one, is showing how this product will fit in your lifestyle. Think about the last emotional connection that you have, whether it was this morning, last night, or even during the prayer this morning. When there is some type of emotional connection, the percentage of some type of interaction committed is so much higher when you are put into a position where you can simply relate to telling that human story. And action, again, is just closing the journey of the invitation. And that is just standard spot, like product shots of different products. So I invite you guys, if you're watching an ad or seeing something, see if one of the ads will generate one of these objectives. More often than not, a lot of the objectives in the spot will try to contain all three of these, which is beyond ineffective. So, based on our studies with Google and the other ads that we were able to generate, one objective in a marketing piece is 81 times more effective. Whereas two objectives, so if I would say, hey, buy this car, and oh yeah, sign up today and get these offers. Two different objectives. The success rate goes down to 60%. Three objectives within an app goes down to 3%. And any commercial spot ad or whatnot that has four objectives is completely worthless. So, going back to design thinking, it really takes an entire department to really come up with something powerful. And one ad simply does not fit them all. So at Kenn Garff, our internal ad agency is called Spinoff. And just kind of give you a 300-foot view of our process within Kenn Garff is, one, we always start with a project kickoff. And that's where a dealership who has a need or an issue that they need solved, that they will come forward to their representative who will come talk to us at this kickoff meeting and talk to us. For example, Hawaii. We just acquired 7 dealerships in Hawaii, all of Kia, and there's a lot of hesitation letting this corporation out of Salt Lake City into Hawaii, which I totally get and understand. So the objective at hand is, all right, how can we slowly walk in and let them know we're here to help you, not own you. So within that scope, we talk about roles, we define roles, the timeline, what's expected, who's going to have the final buy-in and approval. The second one is, all right, now that all the stakeholders have agreed to what is at hand, I figured out the objective, a brief is submitted. A project owner is named who oversees all the ins and outs of that project and makes sure everything's happening on a timely manner. And that essentially is, I was going to compare it to the Book of Mormon, but that's in blasphemy. Meaning, it's a source of all truth within the creative project. Next is the creative process. So once that creative brief is sent out, it is given to my team, where this is really where all hands are on deck and ideas are coming up and really diving into all the research development. We're pitching ideas, we're getting feedback, we're going through edits, we're going through review. And it's tough. Sometimes your work is really scrutinized. And I wish app school would prepare the emotional toll sometimes that you get so attached to an idea that there's going to be not the same excitement for your project that you have for it. Followed by traffic and deliverables. We have to work with the media team who will buy our TV spots. Our media team will also find locations for billboards and outdoor prints, and then ultimately a post-mortem. And this is probably the most effective spot, is understanding, all right, here we've gone through as a team, we have tried, we've laughed, we hit this deadline, but let's review and see what went well, what did not go well. Let's celebrate our successes, but let's figure out what did not work well, so the next time this project or something thereof, someone this comes through, we can make it better. And then if the project has updates or stats or how it was received by the public, we'll review it from there. But throughout the entire process, the one thing, if anything you guys take away from this meeting or this conversation is, no matter what journey you're considering this project, from start to finish, looking at the project through the customer lens is by far the most critical lifesaver or component that will always aid you in developing the direction of some type of inspiration. And if it's not working through the customer's lens and you think it's just cool, it's not going to work. So when we come back to Kenn Garff, we hear you. This tagline's been around now for about 2 decades, and there's so much equity built into it within the Utah market that it's a lot easier for us to run with more conceptual ideas. Whereas like California, that's the other regions that we're in, they don't know what this even means. So the dealerships out there, whether it's Toyota, BMW, they'll run with their messaging and their ideas. Where Kenn Garff is like, hey, if it's Kenn Garff's own company, we need to encourage the brand voice, which is make the car buying experience very car-like. So with that, growing up in Utah, the G, I always thought it was in the air. So going in, my first project was to come up with this new campaign for outdoor, and this essentially was it. Come to find out the G is an on-ramp, so that was news to me. But anyways, thinking how simple it was, what was in there, let's just throw on an array of individuals, characteristics, personalities, and show them, hey, we can relate to everyone, not just one specific demographic. Kind of a refresher of we hear you and finding who it is that we are hearing. But now we come to more of an overall idea concept. This is a campaign that was launched 2 quarters ago. And the hard thing with outdoor billboard is you have to say it within 8 words or less, because usually the viewer will have 8 seconds or less and you can take it in. So when you're driving down the freeway and you see a billboard with tons of objectives, that's going to cause a car accident. And then you can buy a car. But with this one, we're called Crossfire. And it's taking just normal phrases that are negative and flip into a positive. Simple, clean execution. Then we take this one message, as Hay Whipple book that I've read and I think you guys are currently reading now. It is so important to hold on to one message and flush that one message out in an array of different executions. Because if this approach or idea has several different arms and legs, it's going to easily confuse the consumer. So when thinking of this idea, where is this idea going to be living? For Google, it's going to be on our Google display, Google Discovery ads. It's also going to be saturated to all the websites, the dealership website, KSL, and other little traffic sites out there, followed by social. Our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and even print oracles occasionally. So thinking of an idea, it might be great, but when you step back and think of an idea, it's great when it's able to touch and solve a problem within that medium that it's going to be showcased in. Who has seen Name That Sound? That's my fear. Okay. 2 people. 3, I've seen it as well. This is a project that we worked on with Google, and it was really taking Kenn Garff back and really playing around with a new experiment. Kind of just stepping out from what they've been doing and really figuring out a way to define their voice. But what was rad with Google is we ended up creating this long 6-minute spot. From that, we were able to dice it up into 6 seconds, 15, 30 seconds, and 1 6-minute. What's crazy about the algorithms within the whole social world now is they're able to target you based on your interest, based on what you're clicking on, based on what you're not clicking on. With that type of information, it is powerful. So with that, with the amount of deliverables that we have, we were able to sequence endless possibilities of how to really make contact with a viewer from start to finish. So every viewer who's going to see this, in this case this room was 2, is going to have a different viewing experience overall. But the cool thing with Google is we're able to step in, try and experiment different options and avenues that Kenn Garff has yet to do. So as Ben mentioned, we're currently in a handful of regions. So the objective at hand now is, all right, enough with the OEM manufactured messaging. We really want to push out the brand message we hear. And so my team and I, working with all the regional managers, are figuring out the best way to enter those markets and understanding the best way to define we hear you. With Utah, there's a lot of equity. They know it, they understand it. But Iowa, they might think it's a hearing aid device or a therapist or what have you. So there's different things that before you can really jump up and start going abstract or having a lot of conceptual freedom. But at the end of the day, your marketing team is what really comes down to. We spend more time with people we work with than your own family. So it's pretty crazy, but trying to find that environment, that culture that you fit in, that you can thrive in, and walk away being buddies with these people is priceless. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to creative execution, it comes down to the team itself. Before I go into Q&A, in-house versus agency. How many of you guys want to go into an agency? In-house? Marketing? Okay.
Everyone's hands should be up for marketing.
One of the first things that I will look at when reviewing an application for a potential candidate in the is some type of agency experience. There's no quicker way that you can learn than through an agency. I mean, it's tough, but the best of the best are always within the ad agency because things are moving really quick. You are forced to learn skills that you would have never thought of taking on. You are forced to grow, but you're working with people who have been in the industry for a while, so you're automatically catapulted to this next level of execution. The reason why I bring this up is understanding timelines, understanding communication, understanding budgets, everything that is required to really pull off an effective ad. I was able to really grasp quickly within an agency environment. Because walking into an in-house, which is a lot slower, prepared me to wear a lot more hats. It allowed me to really market myself more as a valuable employee, but more so bring more solution and innovative ideas to the table that I was able to understand different techniques and strategy that would really impact an in-house approach. So most of you guys, how are you guys feeling with graduating with the next chapter? Good.
Most of these students I've talked to are feeling a little bit stressed right now in the junior core. We push them hard. And career-wise, they're pretty awesome, but there's a lot of uncertainty, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
What are you most nervous about?
Knowing which direction to go, there's so many good opportunities, sometimes which one.
Different opportunities, which directions is what he said.
I think just having opportunities is a goal very interesting.
That's a key one too. Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things like I've been considering is like finding the right internship, because I know there are some internships where they kind of just like put you in a room with all the other interns and pass what tasks you do, and there's others where it's kind of more hands-on and just there. So for me, it's like finding one where I can learn from people that have a lot of experience, but also being able to kind of like take my own direction and do things on my own. So it's like that balance, I guess.
Yeah, that's a tricky balance. I'm glad you said that. What's that other hand over here? I'm just saying that for someone to say something. Well, I was scared of mine last. I was in BYU, but probably slow because I was so scared. But the cool thing is, I remember one of the key assignments when I was at Portfolio School in San Diego was, it was my junior year. And it was really understanding what steps do I need to take next. And I wish someone had told me this when beginning my career, but it was reaching out to agencies, putting them in a good spot, knowing that you're not looking for something right away, not instantaneously. You're not giving them pressure, which will cause them to push back and be like, hey, I'm busy right now. You coming out and you're like, this is what I want. So what the task was reaching out to one, an ad agency that you would love to work at, or in-house, or a marketing firm, or any type of organization that you would want to be a part of. The second one was reach out to a smaller business. And the third one was reach out to other areas within your hometown or where you potentially see yourself starting as a young professional. And slowly introducing yourself. And being, for example, for my situation, when I was in San Diego, I come back to Utah occasionally, and there was an agency here, Richter 7. And I did not know where I wanted to end up. So I reached out to Richter 7, was one of the agencies that reached out. And I talked to their creative director and said, hey, I'm a student out here, and I would love to sit down and just pick your brain about the day-to-day life of what it is in your agency, the marketing life, and just kind of get your perspective. And coming in at an angle like that, they will eat it up. And this guy who did eat it up, which I'm so grateful he did, was Ryan Anderson, and coolest dude ever. So from there is where that relationship started to nurture, as far as me being able to really get a feel of understanding the opportunities for me, but really getting that expertise and that advice from someone professionally firsthand. So within that conversation, it's like, hey Ryan, again, I'm an ad student. Do you mind if I send you work to get feedback? I know it's student work, it's whatever, but I would love your feedback. And they will provide feedback, and he did. And so slowly but surely, you're developing this relationship, like I did with Ryan. And in that conversation, it's like, hey, my one advice is if you can get an internship with Chris and Porter, do it. And I'm so grateful I had that counsel to really push me in that direction, because similar to you, what was it? Jacob is trying to figure out what you want to get your hands in. I mean, time is an investment, and some internships are not paid. If it's not paid, avoid it like the plague. But with that, it had not been him, I would never even thought about applying for it. So in this whole process is what we call an informational interview. So I'm developing this relationship with this creative director that I look up to. And so I'm at my junior year. My senior year rolls around and I say, hey, Ryan, we've been talking for a while. We've had lunch. You've seen my work. You've seen who I am as a person, what I'm capable of executing. Would you hire me? And because we have been able to have that type of relationship building up over time, it was, yes, like, let's get an internship. Let's take this for a run and see how it goes. So my invitation to you is start figuring out opportunities now. Similar to Jacob, I think the concern is it going to mesh with the flow of me? Is it going to coincide with my beliefs? Is it going to take me away from family? Is it going to be a direct mail piece versus a YouTube spot? Like, what is it going to do? But the cool thing with an internship, it's not permanent, but you're able to explore options. But the research development and building that relationship, you're able to really understand, okay, I'm really going to go forward and go for full court press and like, hire me. And when that's the right step for you. So I know that was tons of information, and I was going to put a scary video to make sure people was awake and whatnot, but that's that. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Brad. I love that you talked about several things we've talked about in class: the marketing objectives, awareness, consideration, use of action, just like the funnel we talked about last time in class, I believe, right? So you nailed on some very important topics. Thank you. We had over 180 questions submitted by students before this lecture, so lots of questions. We can't get through all of those, sorry. But we can get through some of them. So are you okay for another 15 minutes, Q&A?
Yeah.
Awesome. Before we go to questions, does anyone have any questions right now that have come up that you really want to ask? Yeah.
I'm just curious, you talked about every time you entered like a new industry, you talked about like having to do research. Where did you turn to do that research? Like, what were your sources?
Really good question. One is walking into like that perfectly posh, not being someone who pampered myself then, but pampering is actually really legit and therapeutic, and when you work in crazy hours, it's godsend. But going to your question is, I just started like jumping in. I don't even know if Pinterest is still a thing with you guys, with your generation. Okay. One is I'll always go to Pinterest. There's another site that is like called coolhunters.net or not.net.com. And what I'm doing with Pinterest and these random things is just trying to find really inspiring things like pampering. I'll just Google pampering and just seeing what's coming up from Pinterest and seeing what like the top competitors are doing and figuring out, okay, they're targeting this demographic with this face serum. We want to come up with face serum, so let's see what they're doing. How is their audience responding? Or even jumping out to a professional within the serum manufacturer and asking them ideas. But overall, the biggest thing is just diving into the target audience, which at that time were just single, middle-aged, stay-at-home moms, and understanding what really ticks with them, what would they really want to gravitate to. So every time I jump in, it's always, I just need to be inspired. I'm just going on Pinterest and be like, pampering products, what comes up? Oh, she's combing her hair, she's plucking her eyebrows, he's waxing his legs. Oh, okay. Just random things that will kind of like start allowing me to really view things as a traveler. Meaning, when we travel, we tend to look things a lot more closely. Like the way we pay a bill at a restaurant is different. The way that people say hello is different. The way it smells is different. So diving into every project, so look at it as a traveler and being like, this right now seems like pointless information, but I'm gonna put it into my creative bank, and down the road it might trigger and pull from that. So my answer to that is just all over the place. It's just really honing in onto the target audience, and then just figuring out what they love, what they dislike, and figuring out their behavior, which will ultimately help you understand, oh, here's a serum that is anti-age wrinkling, which would hit a 42-year-old who's trying to be preventative with aging skin. So it really is just like this chain effect that happens where I always start small and then start compounding over time.
That's awesome. Good question, Sammy. I love what you said, be a traveler. Tomorrow we're going to do an exercise where you get to leave the classroom for a short time and be a traveler and think in a different way. So, great advice. Thank you, Brad. We have time for 2 more questions in class before I turn to a couple. Yeah, Julie.
I'm just wondering what your opinion about the process looks like, because even your slides are amazing, like they look super cool. But how do you go from like getting your like creative assignment, I guess, to actually making a product that you essentially?
First of all, it's Adderall. My biggest thing is going back to the what if scenario growing up and trying to figure out, okay, I know what I think looks cool, but what will trigger and help you guys think, oh, that's cool as well. It's always just like a trial and error. In advertising, remember, the first idea is always the worst idea. But if you kind of like dive into that idea and push it a little bit, and I found an artist who does more abstract, random street art, mixed with graffiti, mixed with modernism. I'm like, oh, that dude is cool. Who I looked into him and then saw a female who kind of does something similar. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take these assets and just build something cool. But what was tricky is trying to make sure the dots connect and make it cohesive. And it honestly took me some time to really understand where I can really tap into figure out an execution. But what was really beneficial to helping really speed that up was getting feedback. So my senior art director was like, hey, Marianne, check this out, what do you think? And she's like, oh, not this, yeah, how about this color palette? And I'm like, oh, I would have never thought of that, thank you. So a lot of it comes from my research of, all right, here are these 2 artists I love, let me put it into practice. I think it's cool, let me bounce it off someone else, get their feedback. All their feedback was critical and making it even better, and then kind of evolving from there. And every person is going to be different in figuring out just their creative process. Like, for example, my art director, she'll always doodle before she'll do anything. And that doodle will jump into, all right, let's put that into digital form. Oh, digital form, let me see how Nike executed that idea, or Good Diamond Chocolate, or all these different random products. And then you start to experiment what process works for you. So when working with another creative, or even interviewing, being like, hey, walk me through your creative process. And it'll be interesting to know what works for them, what you never thought of, what you want to apply, or what is just flat out outrageous. So for a while it's going to be trial and error, but within time you'll understand, all right, these are the checking points I have to do to finally get to this point. And team collaboration is one of the most effective things in that process.
One more question. Yeah, Barry.
My question is, as you're approaching like applications or interviews for these job positions where you aren't super experienced, but like you will be doing, like how do you approach that? Does that make sense?
Sorry, say that one more time.
Like you're talking a lot about like how you're applying for jobs and getting landing jobs with things you don't have experience in, I guess. How do you approach like those applications or interviews to kind of market yourself when you don't have like the specific experience?
Really good question. The sad reality is sometimes it just has to do with timing, but it also goes about your delivery. So if, I've had some people come out to me, come at me like aggressively, and to me that's a red flag. And I'm like, I don't have time to think about this, so I'm gonna put you in the back pocket forever. Just kidding. So what happens is trying to figure out an opportunity where you want to tap into them as far as what they're bringing to the table or what type of insight you provide to a student. And more often than not, creatives, it's a path that's not defined like a doctor, or it's just trial and error, which makes it really tricky. So jumping in from an informational approach, knowing that there's no expectation at the end of that conversation, really makes it more a comfortable easy conversation to have with someone who is interested. Because if that employer, that designer, or whoever knows that, oh, this is just a student wanting to get their foot in the door and understand what's going on, more often than not, whether time is on your side or not, they'll be like, hey, shoot me up tomorrow afternoon, let's talk about it. And it might take a little time to get a response, but consistency and genuine humility of being like, hey, I'm starting to know, can you please throw me along here? And at that point, it's just kind of like starting out with emails to, even if you get in a phone call, as old school as it is, writing a thank you note. And I cannot tell you how meaningful and how much that will mean to the recipient, and they will not forget that. And you're like, was it Mary? Mary is intentional. She is thoughtful. She understands detail. So they start evaluating just these little behaviors that you're putting out there and being like, all right, those are attributes of someone that is worth investing in because they're going to bring a lot to the table as an employee. So it's kind of like slowly baby steps in, but I would simultaneously do it, not put all your eggs in one basket, but throwing out a bigger net and kind of like Tinder. Tinder freaks me out. I was on for 20 minutes and I got scared. But like you're putting yourself out there, you're like, yes, no, but it's in a way kind of managing a relationship type perspective. And even like, let's say you finally get a conversation with that person that you were wanting to chat with and they're a total douche. You're like, okay, I'm walking away from that person in that company. Let me jump to the next person. So even their demeanor, their personality will say a lot of, would this be a boss that I would want to work for? So that was a lot of that.
No, that's great. Brad said something interesting. He said, write thank you notes. I encourage you, something that no one does today, almost no one does, is write physical thank you notes and put a stamp on them and put them in the mail. I've done that a couple of stages along my career, and it has been amazing. Because people aren't used to getting physical notes, right? A physical note's a lot better than an email. So say thank you.
Even if you have to have chat, GPT, whatever, generate for you.
Yep. ChatGPT and write it down. Okay. I want to ask, there are a couple, there were many really good questions asked online beforehand. But one question that I thought was really good was, how do you manage time with, this was a question from Abby. How do you manage time with your family, your extracurricular activities, and still be a rock star at your work?
Is Abby here?
I should have asked that question, sorry.
No, I think that is a question that has, when I started at Chris Porter and seeing the bosses that I worked for, they were married to their job. At that business, there was a concierge, there was a gym, there was a chef, there was a full-time kitchen. So it was really nurturing this environment of, oh, you stay here 24/7. To the point where employees were meeting one another because that was a social life. And I remember, never really admit this out loud, really reevaluating my career path because seeing that lifestyle of my bosses, I'm like, I do not want that. So when I was in New York City, I would work maybe like 90-hour weeks. Sometimes there were 3 all-nighters back to back. And the girl I was dating at one time, she was in I'm a Woman message, and I showed up for filming and I looked like I was stoned. And so they had to put me in the background. But the point of the matter is, it's great to really dive into an environment and soak in and take advantage of the opportunity and learn. But what was happening is my mental state was taking a huge toll. Here I am in New York City, wanting to have the time of my life, but I am married to my computer. And it put me on like a downward spiral to the point where I had to step back and reevaluate the work-life balance. So for me, it had to start with really a hard eye-opener to understand if I continue on this path, I'm going to make bad choices, and I'm going to be very unhealthy and ultimately unhappy. So as I dealt with that head on, that's why I was so excited to come back to Utah, where I was able to really step back and really change my priorities. Because from New York, I had an opportunity to go to the UK, and I thought, I'm such work perfectionist as it is. This environment is just enabling this side of me, and I know I can bring good to the table, but it's no good for me. And so what ended up happening is when I was going to interviews, one of the biggest things I was asking is, hey, let me know your work-life balance. But that was their perspective, and not knowing if they were trying to sell me the idea of taking this job. So I'd be like, let me go talk to other colleagues here. What's your work-life balance? Like, my priority is my family. And if the job is going to take me away from what's most important, that means this company is, I'm not important to that company. So it's really understanding the culture, but it's trial and error. Sometimes you walk into a situation like, shoot, I'm screwed. And understanding the world of creativity and marketing, it always ebbs and flows with deadlines. But it comes to trying to figure out different checking points to really reevaluate yourself as a person and as a performance. Like, if your performance is taking a toll on your mental state, you guys, it's not worth it. But really being able to understand these key checking points. So let's say you're in an environment where you have to be there. It's a commitment, it's a job. But no one knows stress indicators better than you as an individual. So let's say one stress indicator approach is, oh, I have to present something that's kind of stressing me out. Okay, I get through it. The next one is, Brad, you're going to need to execute this TV concept in 2 hours and really pull it off. Okay, let's talk about this, because now I'm jumping to my next stress indicator. But having to understand my stress indicators earlier on, I would be able to step back and negotiate a situation right. Okay, if you're wanting that in 2 days, this is what I expect in return. So understanding it's okay to raise your hand and be like, all right, enough is enough, I'm stepping back. But the more you give, people take advantage of it. So it's really up to you to really set those parameters and learn. Because my first year of my marriage, I surprised my wife's age. I was working crazy hours and walking into a new gig, you're always wanting to prove yourself. But then realizing my life is no longer about me, it's about the bigger picture, is where the paradigm shift for me was what I needed for my life to slow down to jump into a situation like that, to realize that TV concept is nowhere near important in my relationship with my wife. And if there's ever something like, all right, do I stay 2 hours later or do I miss my kids' 20-minute soccer practice? Let's go to soccer practice. Because ultimately, whatever inspiration, whatever contact, or whatever things inspired you in that 20 minutes, not only are you taking a break, but that mental break might inspire someone to reduce ideas down the road. I know that sounds really weird, but it's always like an environment to juggle that lifestyle. So it's kind of, I know that was what I'm going to ask for.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Last question, Seth already asked in the back row here. He said, what has been the biggest cause of your success?
Oh, so I think and I feel like this is a mistake to really become really talking about it. When I was in art school, every project I would walk into, I know it's going to sound really cheesy, and so I really never talked about it, but in the confines of this room, it's like I would always seek the Holy Ghost. Not even lying, like I would give a project and be like, Brad, you need to figure out how to do whatnot. And before anything, I would always make sure that I was one in a healthy mental space, but really to figure out, take a deep breath and rely on promptings. And if I talk about to my team right now, they think I'm crazy. But it is just amazing the influence that past experience will have to inspire you to really dive in to figure out what choices that you need to make, with relying on making right choices. I believe in what you put out there, you can get back tenfold. But with that comes humility. Receiving constructive criticism at first was hard. Like, how dare you tell me that purple is not purple enough, or just like stupid stuff. But the biggest thing was use that humility to grow. And in the interviewing process, the first question I always ask is, do you have an ego? Whether they answer correctly or not, their personality will show me if they do or don't. And egos are just something that I just don't have time to work with. But what will eliminate that would be the humility factor of being like, hey, what you said is great. I'm going to apply that to the next go around of my next idea, so I can avoid that issue or just take that information and run with it. And another thing that is really critical is being in the seat of giving feedback and understanding how to grow successfully. It's never get defensive, get curious. So for example, I wanted to put an Asian lady on the cover of the magazine, and the owner was a tool about it. And so being half Japanese, I'm like, oh, no one's even around, let's do it. And so I was getting really defensive to the point that it was not a cohesive conversation. Regardless, it probably should never have happened. But had I gotten to a state of, let me get curious about why you have this attitude that you have, would have allowed me to be more successful in that situation than come out of it combatively, even though that probably is what I had done. But walking into the situation and growing from it and owning it, whether you succeed or fail, you own it. And more often than not, when you fail and you take ownership, there's so much respect for that individual before you admitted that, than someone who acts as though nothing has happened. So really, one, listening to the spirit, and two, being humble to really soak in as much information as you can to help you progress even more. And yeah.
That's great, thank you.
Great question.
Be humble, listen to the spirit. Dean major in, if you talk to her about her research, her number one advice for doing academic research, she gave this to me when I was interviewing with her, was she said, my first research assistant I hired is the spirit. And that was inspiring to me. That's a big part of the reason why I came to BYU. So do that in your work. Even if you're creating, you got some pink panties in one quarter, right? Campaigns you're working on that you think that Heavenly Father could care less about, He cares about you. I love that Brad brought that up. So, Brad, it's a really small gift for the amount of time that you spent on this, but we want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
And let's hear it for Brad.